Hi, this is Glenn Livingston from BecomeARealCoach.com. You're about to hear an interview which I didn't originally do for my coaching audience, but rather which Sharon and I gave to a large audience of entrepreneurs who were struggling at the time with severe financial difficulties. It was shortly after the severe financial downturn, and my colleague Perry knew that Sharon and I had been through a tremendous financial downturn many, many years before. And he asked me if we'd come on and kind of lay it bare and talk about everything we went through and how did we survive. And he kind of knew that I wanted to declare bankruptcy and Sharon didn't, and that eventually we decided not to, and that we made a very full recovery and better. He did. He got us to lay it bare, and I was actually kind of embarrassed. In the years following this interview, I've had literally over 100 people come up to me personally to tell me that it changed their life. When I speak at seminars and I'm asked to talk on radio shows and whatever, I get people talking to me and tell me they heard this interview and it really changed their life. And so I felt like it was an important thing to share with my coaching audience. And that's where you're hearing it. So excuse the fact that it was done for a marketing audience. I think that it's kind of a good way for you to get to know Sharon and I and our story a little better. But more importantly, I think that, the fact that here we are, two coaches and very psychologically introspective, sensitive people, very successful people otherwise, who went through a tremendous downturn, and we had a lot of observations we felt like we could share with people to help them to dig themselves out of that kind of a hole. And I guess that's enough said. Without further ado, here's the call. Thanks.
Mr. X is an accomplished professional who decided to do something entrepreneurial about, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, and it kind of went okay for a while, and then 9/11 happened. With it, his business went in a very bad direction. He lost a couple of $1 million. He ended up, all told, about $700,000 in debt. He had borrowed money from relatives and all kinds of really fun stuff like that. Had a whole platoon of bankers and lawyers and piranhas and everything, and slowly started digging himself out. He and his wife did. I knew that there had been a big failure way back when. I didn't find out until, I've known this guy for quite a long time, but I didn't know the extent of it until relatively recently, and he told me that he was about to get out of debt. I don't remember grasping the magnitude of it, but anyway, as of the beginning of November 2008, Mr. X is free and clear and has completely reinvented himself again. Much congratulations goes to Mr. X. It's been a long road. Is that right, Mr. X?
That's very correct.
Mr. X is actually Glenn Livingston. Now, a lot of you know Glenn. Glenn is well known for his market research methods and products that he sells. He also now has a pay-per-click management company. A lot of you know him as the guinea pig guy. He's sold more guinea pig ebooks than anybody else in the world. That's a distinction. I'm sure your family of doctors and psychologists is proud of that one, aren't they, Glenn?
Oh, exceptionally.
So, those of us in the online marketing world sometimes find ourselves in interesting situations. Glenn, welcome.
Well, thanks again, Perry. It's kind of an honor to celebrate with you. I asked my wife if she could join us. I'm not sure if she's on the line as well.
I've been listening.
Originally thought of the idea, and I thought it was particularly important because the truth is, when I saw the email that said Glenn fought back and he didn't declare bankruptcy and did everything right and now everything is here, the truth is that the reason we didn't declare bankruptcy is because my wife would not let me.
Okay.
She had more faith in me and in herself than I did, and I just didn't think it was fair for me to be on the phone celebrating getting credit without having her, because I would have in a heartbeat declared bankruptcy. I was arguing that that's the reason the laws are there. We need to clear ourselves so we can be more productive again, and she was saying no, she couldn't live with it, and she thought it would be a blow to our egos. And Sharon, honey, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Sharon.
Yeah.
Thank you, Perry.
I'm really excited to have both of you. To whatever extent you guys are willing, this could be a cut a vein and bleed conversation. When I was struggling away as an employee, the worst debt I ever had was maybe 1/10 of $700,000, and I thought that was like impossibly huge, and I chafed over it for a long time. did get out, but this is big. The other thing I want to say is lots of people are in this kind of situation. I mean, this is turning out to be a pretty popular teleseminar here. Had almost a couple thousand people sign up. So I'm sure a lot of people listen to this one on their iPods for a long time. So why don't you guys tell the story of what actually happened and where you guys come from, and a little bit your background so people have a picture.
Sure. And hopefully then we can end by talking about everything that we learned from it and
absolutely
what we might have done differently and how we could have suffered less and how we might have gotten through it faster and that kind of thing. But Sharon, do you want to go first, honey?
No.
I will. I think that when you're talking about the sheer size of the numbers, one of the interesting things is that it all depends on your perspective. At that time, a few years prior to 9/11, I had largely been focusing on my clinical practice. Before that, I had been doing corporate consulting, and I had done these large, multiple six-figure projects, and Sharon was doing those kind of things all the time. So $700,000 didn't sound as large to me, although it really took a lot out of my hide. But for the few years leading up to that, I had really wanted to get out of the corporate consulting world, and I was focusing on my practice, and I think I was making $125,000 a year, charging anywhere from $25 a session for people that really couldn't afford it to $125, maybe $150.
And you were a psychologist.
I was a psychologist, and you know what, Perry? $700,000 is a lot of sessions.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lifetime of paying someone for psychoanalysis. That's a lot of sessions.
That's a lot of dysfunction, too.
And a lot of dysfunction, yeah. On the one hand, I think that it really forces you into a place where you have to think at a different level, because I was not going to pay back $700,000 doing therapy sessions anytime soon. And really, we'd had a bunch of money in the bank before, and we were pushing towards changing our lives around and maybe adopting a child or something, and we had a lot of other really important plans, and so it wasn't just paying back the debt, it was really restoring our dreams. I had to think at a different level. And so very quickly, both Sharon and I were thinking, what can we do? How can we dig ourselves out of this? I'm presenting it as if that's all I was thinking, because there was also a lot of negative thinking that was crippling for me. And I can talk a little bit more about that later. We kept the boat afloat for a couple of years by taking something that we were doing offline and developing a software project for it and starting to sell that to the same corporate audience, but now we could administer it a little less expensively, and started selling a lot of very large projects to do that. And Sharon worked her little tush off selling to consultants, and we just barely managed to stay afloat. Here's the story. The story is Sharon and I in the corporate consulting world were, I guess you could call us brainiacs. We understand the reasons that people respond to advertising and how to evaluate that for companies and give them very specific advice after talking to consumers about how they should change their advertising. And we got the bright idea that we should switch to the other end of the industry. I talk to so many entrepreneurs who get tired of one element of what they're doing, and they totally forget about their core competency. They just totally forget what it is that brought me to this place in the first place, and they think they have to change everything about their lives. In retrospect, that's one of the worst mistakes that we made, because we should have just kept on selling consulting, intellectual capital, and just changed the way that we were selling it. But instead, we decided that we wanted to open up a very large focus group facility with all of the bells and whistles accommodated for the emerging internet technologies for broadcasting video and audio. And Sharon had been renting focus group facilities across the country and felt like she knew the industry better than anybody else, and she really does. She knew what it takes to have a great focus group facility. But we didn't have a lot of the other experience. Now we're not selling to corporations. Now we're selling to people who were essentially our competitors with totally different budgets and price resistance points, reasons for purchase and reasons for complaining. And all of a sudden we're in this situation where everybody is niggling for nickels and dimes with us. I remember that even before 9/11 happened, even though we were starting to get some people in, it was really upsetting to us that we were thrust into a whole different market. We're doing okay. We're doing kind of sort of okay. But this facility was in the New York area, and most specifically, it was on Long Island, and about 25 miles east of Ground Zero. One of the things about the focus group industry is that people have to fly to go from group to group to group. As soon as 9/11 hit, companies said, I'm not sending my people around anymore. And none of the moderators wanted to fly, and the industry just basically dried up. On top of that, well, everything was pretty much right about the facility. We hadn't done the research to figure out the right location. We just really, really wanted to do it on Long Island because we lived on Long Island. When I'm talking about our research methodologies, I say, if I did then what I do now for researching a niche market or evaluating a business, I would say, well, Glenn, why didn't you take out an ad in a trade magazine and see how many people would call you first? Then I would have found out, if I took out an ad on Long Island and took out an ad in New Jersey, I would have found out that 90% of the focus groups are in New Jersey for a reason, that people don't really want to travel to Long Island because that's where all the companies are. And so we were fighting that vulnerability until 9/11 happened, and then after 9/11, it was just no business. And we had 20 people working for us, and we had $150,000 a month of expenses. I really freaked out. I know Sharon freaked out also.
I only freaked out when we had that big error that we did by accident because we had somebody send out an email right after 9/11.
Oh, my God.
You have to tell that story because that's when I thought I was going to die.
Well, this is definitely an internet marketing story.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know this story. This is a good one.
Okay. In the year 2000, I was not extraordinarily facile with email marketing and opt-in lists, and I didn't know which service to use, and I did have a programming degree, so I tried to piece together my own email server, which I did badly. When I say it's a programming degree, it's not a bachelor's degree, it's just a certificate. I hired some programmers in Russia to fix it for me, which they did, we thought, and we put together a system for emailing our database of respondents. When you run a focus group, Nabisco comes to us and says, we want to talk to people who are interested in a new diet cookie. They've got to be this age. They've got to be 25 to 34 and, women with 2 kids. And we needed a system that could email that set of people, and we've done a lot of recruiting to get them into that system. And we had about 20,000 people who were responding to our email invitations. And when we would want to recruit a focus group, we would put in the topic of the focus group, the date of the group, and there were some automated things that the email program would put into the subject line and the body. One of them was the word get paid in capital letters. So it would say, get paid, diet cookie focus groups. Then in the body it would say date and time, and please respond if you'd like to come.
So you have to back up just for a second, because the reason that we sent out this email, which if you haven't heard it coming yet, you will. What happened was I had a major anxiety attack with 9/11. I really thought, they're coming to get me, they're going to bomb my house, there's going to be anthrax on all my letters. I was totally freaked out. My business is going to be ruined, all of that kind of stuff. And Glenn came up with this really cool idea. Well, we came up with it together, but Glenn came up with this idea now that he knows all about internet marketing and how to invite people. And we were going to take a really bad situation and feel good about it, because the best revenge is having a good life. Instead of letting terror guide us, we were going to go and do something positive and invite everyone we knew to our facility to come and share their feelings about the whole 9/11 disaster. And it was going to be inspirational. It was going to be heartfelt. It was going to be anybody, because we had all these webcams set up and everything, people could actually observe. If they couldn't come, they could be watching on their computer. It was going to be this momentous thing. We were going to save the world. Anyway. Now you can continue.
I'll finish our story in a second. The one thing I want to point out is I think that was the right idea. I think that in a time of panic, and this is certainly a time of panic, the thing to do is what you've done best. I think we were onto the right idea. We just did it too impulsively and didn't have all the pieces in place. But rather than thinking about the entrepreneurs on this call, trying to think about how to fill up the holes in their business, and the question I'd ask them is, what is it that got you here? What's your core competency? What do you do best? This isn't a time to jump from thing to thing to thing. This is a time to really focus on that core competency, strengthen it, and rely on it more than you ever have. Okay, and our core competency was that we were raised first and foremost as psychologists, and we wanted to provide that service. We send out an email.
This is the exact day after 9/11. This is 9/12.
This is the morning of 9/12. We send out an email that says to 20,000 people, I told my programmer, we're going to do focus groups on the World Trade Center tragedy. Could you send out an email to recruit them for me? So the email goes out, and because of the way the system was designed, it says, get paid World Trade Center tragedy. Get paid World Trade Center tragedy. You'd think that would be enough to make this a story. And then the rest of the email says, please respond back with your gender and age if you'd like to come. You think that would be the end of the story, but it's unfortunately not, because the programmer set it up so that when anybody responded to that email, the response went into the broadcast queue. What it was that when they responded back, that response was broadcast out to the whole list. It's almost like it was a list server, and so any response went out to the 20,000 people, and any response to that response went out to 20,000 people. And one of the first responses we got was, and remember the email says, "Get paid, World Trade Center tragedy. Please respond back with your name, age, gender, and phone number," because we were going to call them and recruit them, and we were going to separate them all into unique groups so we could have groups of women, groups of men, groups of older men, groups of younger men. Oh, I'm shaking a little bit as I tell this story. I forget sometimes. The first woman writes back. She said, maybe not the first, but among the first people to write back says, "Hi, I'm Kim. I'm 28 and I'd like to come."
In hot pink. In hot pink.
But literally. You can imagine on the morning of 9/12 that 20,000 people receiving that response say, "You little bitch, I can't believe you're taking advantage of this already. You cruel and inhuman thing. Isn't it enough that all these people were killed?" Those responses, every last one of them get broadcast out to 20,000 people, at which point all of those 20,000 people start responding, "What are you talking about? I never said that, you stupid bastard." And the morning of 9/12 in New York, and you know how upset everybody was. It was, well, everybody knows. We had started a war on the Internet, and we were in the middle, and
the president of my association calls and starts yelling at us, and we were getting all these, horrible calls that, again, emails that went out to 20,000 people saying how awful Sharon Livingston was for trying to take advantage. And, by the way, nobody was going to get paid. This was going to be a place where you can just come and talk, and we were going to feed people. We were doing it really to get over our own anxiety and...
Well, we were doing it to nurture the community.
Right.
Which was our way of getting over our anxiety.
Our own anxiety. Right, exactly.
Right. And the last part of it was that a virus got attached to the email. So now we've got this war on the Internet. There's a virus associated with it. Everybody in our industry is saying, "What's wrong with you?" And Sharon looks at me and she says, "Glenn, you handle it."
I thought I was going to have a nervous breakdown. I mean, this was my reputation for my little place in the world that I've been functioning for 10 years, or 13, 14 years, and I thought, man, I'm dead. I'm just dead. I'll never be able to show my face ever again. I left, and we had our dog, Zach, who was, I guess, around a year and a half old or something, and I decided I'm going for a walk with Zach. 3 miles away from home, this big dog got out from its invisible fence and literally chased us, biting Zach the whole way, all the way back to my door. Even when you think it can't get any worse, it always can. That probably wasn't the part you were going to tell, but that's the part I remember.
The end of the story is, I stayed up for about 3 days straight, and we kept the vice president with us, and we got our management around us and the good people we had around us, and we made phone calls. And we let everybody yell at us, and we patiently explained to one person after the next what happened. We had to meet with some people when they were threatening to sue us. We had to talk to our attorneys.
And we had to pay that girl.
We had to change her phone number, and we had to settle a lawsuit possibility with her. I don't really want to dwell on that, but the thing is, what I wish I did at that point was said to myself, "Glenn, you just went through the worst of it. There's nothing worse that happened after that externally." The worst thing that happened after that for me was I started eating. I started eating chocolate and pizza as much as I could.
Well, hang on. I mean, 9/11 happened, which was the beginning of the end of your conference center. True?
Yes, we really knew that.
But just to make it worse, you had this horrible, horrible black eye with everybody on your email list. You unleashed this bedlam. I don't know. I kind of have a hard time imagining a worse thing to happen on the Internet than that. I mean, that's like the worst. So this is the beginning of the end of the conference center, and yeah, so you start eating.
You know, there were some good things that came out of the email fiasco. A lot of people, once they understood what was wrong and they had an opportunity to talk to us, we made a lot of connections. This went beyond just the respondents. It started going into clients, and we made a lot of connections with people that wound up doing business with us because they kind of empathized with what we went through, and that's kind of an interesting experience. That, you know, how they say out of chaos comes opportunity, and I think that that's really true. So for me, the worst thing was that I gained 60 pounds. I'm a pre-diabetic guy and very bad triglycerides, and there's heart attacks up and down my family. And the bottom line was that all of my beliefs about what was going to happen and that I was going to be in debt for the rest of my life and that I was never going to get out of this, I was never going to accomplish what we wanted to, our dreams were never going to come to fruition. It wasn't the actual events, it was my beliefs about the events that got me fat and sick. In retrospect, let's say that I had gone broke. Let's say we had gone broke. It would have been so much better to have just gone broke than to make myself fat and sick over it. You know, I mean, nothing really much worse happened after that. Nothing really much worse. We had a lot of arguing back and forth because I kept on pushing for closing the facility and going bankrupt, and, you know, Sharon wanted to fight it out. It was the right thing to do that we fought it out. We kept people from having to lose their jobs, and we really saved a lot of face. But there's a lot of arguing and going to family for money, which is really, really embarrassing as a 36-year-old doctor. There was endless meetings with bankers and accountants and attorneys, and, you know, in retrospect, what really bothered me about that is that none of them really helped you make any more money. It was all about how to prevent the damage. It was all about damage control, and I hate spending my time on damage control. I want to spend time building the dream. I don't want to spend my time on damage control. I think it's a necessary evil. That was no fun. So how about if we talk about some of the good things that came out of it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And Sharon, do you want to add anything?
I think you did a really, really good job. And I think, oh, my God, the meetings with the bankers and the accountants and the attorneys and the people who help you get rid of your furniture and stuff like that, that was grueling, painful, and really kept us from doing what we do best, which is doing our work. So I don't know how we would have done that over, but, boy, that was unpleasant.
Isn't this kind of a story about distractions compounded upon distractions compounded on distractions? Because you got a little bit itchy to have a change of scenery. And so you said, hey, let's go from this part of the business to this totally other part of the business, and let's do this great idea, maybe a little bit grandiose.
Just a little.
A little. Which we all do, okay? And then 9/11, then the email fiasco, then the arguing about, well, do we throw in the towel, do we keep rowing? So, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'm aware of how uncomfortable it is to tell the story. It's just, I kind of use it as a story so that people can, it's one thing to say, oh, well, I lost $2 million and, you know, now we're doing great, and everybody says, well, that's great because maybe I could do it also. It's another thing to really tell the story. It's just, it was not a fun time. But here's what really came out of it for me that I think made me stronger. Of course, learning to do the research before going forward with any venture. I mean, everybody knows I'm the research guy, and I won't belabor at that point. We learned how to run a cash-strapped company. See, I used to think if you got more than 60 days behind on your bills to your vendors, that they would never do business with you again, that they would be forcing you into bankruptcy quickly. And I think I had this fantasy in the back of my head that there were these men in pristine white suits with mustaches that would come to my house and kick us out and take all the money that we possibly could get and would be living on the street. And the truth was that if you don't hide, if you just get on the phone with people and you tell them what's going on, and you don't lie, because people kept pressing us, could we make a plan? Could you pay me $500 a month? And at the time, I didn't even know if I could do that. You know, there were times when I had to say to people, no, I can't make that plan. I really want to pay you. I'm going to pay you as soon as I can. I'm happy to stay in contact with you, but I can't make that plan. You know, we're living on fumes. We're running on empty. It was very uncomfortable, but it was the first time in my life that I saw that the floor was a lot stronger than I thought the floor was. You know, I thought you put a little bit of weight on the floor and it was going to crack, and the truth was that it was made maybe not of the strongest type of steel, but it was fairly well reinforced. It was going to take an awful lot of weight to crack that floor. At our worst, I think there might have been a time when we were over a year behind with a lot of vendors for a lot of money. Now, we have relationships with these people for years, so it's not like, you know, a guy you just hired and then they have nothing to do with you. But even some of those went a lot further than I thought they were going to go with. And the key was, don't hide, don't lie.
And we gave people little bits. I mean, we took out of our mouth to feed the other little birdies. Yeah, I mean, we did. That's what it was like. And
I love your analogies. I love that.
Hey, you know what? I had a friend who owed me some money a few years ago, and I just stopped hearing from him. You know, I'm not going to go try to pound this out of him. He's probably in some kind of financial difficulty. I'm sure he is, and that's why he's not paying me. But I just didn't hear from him for 6 months or a year or something. And he didn't return my phone calls, and finally after this long period of time, I get this phone call from him, and he says, okay, you know, a check is being FedExed to you. Thanks for waiting. And I told him, I said, you know what? I really appreciate that. But you know what? I missed you more than I missed the money.
That's a really good point.
Glenn?
Yeah?
I miss you, honey.
Well, you know, the thing that these situations create is shame. Being ashamed of yourself that why am I such a screw up? Why did I come up with a stupid idea? Why can't I check on the programmer's work and make sure I'm not going to create this massive disaster? Why did I borrow all this money? Why did I go ask relatives for money when my wife told me not to ask relatives for money? And you can beat yourself up and beat yourself up, and what you end up doing is hiding from the whole entire world and being on the run, and it just makes it worse.
And it cycles. It cycles downwards. As soon as you start that isolation, it really cycles downwards. Some of the memories that were the best during this horrible time was realizing, with Sharon, first of all, we got through it together. And, if we survive this, then why could really threaten our marriage, right?
Yep.
But even during the worst of times, there were times when we would cuddle up and watch a movie, making jokes, we'd go hiking, we'd hang out with friends.
All the things that we like to do in best of times.
Right. I actually sent out an email to my list about a month ago, which was one of the more popular emails that I sent out. It wasn't selling anything. It was about Sharon had been at a store. Sharon, could you describe which store at the store with the guy with the apples?
Oh, that one. Sure. We were at this wonderful Max Apples place up here in New Hampshire, a few miles away from our house, where they sell their own apples that they grow. And it's a farm stand. And so I was online to buy some apples, and there was a man and a woman standing in front of me, and she had, 10 apples or something, and they put it on the scale, and he is taking 2 apples out of her bag because he doesn't want to spend that much money on apples, and he's arguing with her about 2 apples. It was just so humiliating to her, to him, and to me as an observer, like, oh my God, to argue over 2 apples? We're not talking about 2 new cars or 2 computers or 2 headsets. I mean, there's 2 apples.
Something that was really healthy.
Yeah.
She was trying to take care of the family, and the guy lost perspective. In the middle of the panic, he lost perspective. I know that it happened to me over and over during this time, and I, now being in a position with hundreds of students and clients, people who are very focused on their business and what happens when the money becomes scarce, I know it's so easy to lose perspective about what's important, and the truth is I have the idea that guy would probably make more money and do better financially if he could really appreciate the fact that his wife was putting those 2 apples in the basket. I really believe that. It's easy to say that. It's hard to live by it. It's easy to say that. And it's a philosophy that I came away with after this experience that I try to live with. There's something else that I really want to make sure we get to, which was, I think that if you're ever going to be bigger than you are, if you're ever going to really live out your vision, then there's got to be a point where you reach and you risk the shame of failure, and where you're incredibly anxious the whole time that you're doing it. And in retrospect, even though there's a lot of mistakes, and I kind of wish we didn't do it, and we paid a heavy price for it, the fact that we had the vision of building this conference center and watching it come together. I mean, here we are. Sharon and I never went to business school. I was raised by a family of 17 psychologists. I was going to be a guy who sat down behind the couch and said, lie down and tell me about your mother. And Sharon was raised by people who owned a deli and who wanted her to be a caterer and maybe a telemarketer. Here we are, these 2 people, and we get together, and we had this vision, and all of a sudden, we put this whole conference center together.
From scratch.
From scratch. From scratch. I used to walk into a bank and marvel at the big marble columns and all of the architecture and how all the people work together and the systems and the structures, and I'd feel like a child, like it was never possible to do that. This thing came together out of our heart, soul, and brain power and vision. Even though we lost a lot of money on it, the ability to take that risk, experience the shame, stay together regardless of what we experienced. I mean, look what we've done after, right?
And to this day, people tell me that they wish that facility was still there, that they loved it. It was beautiful. It was different. It really met their needs.
Instead of being just a sterile focus group facility with a one-way mirror and all these gray walls, and Sharon called this place the Looking Glass, and she built it after Alice in Wonderland. She had fabulous characters and decorations and creature comforts. And
we went up to New Hampshire before we lived here and found a antique place, where they had old furniture but not really antique, and they were selling it for like a song, and we had loaded up 2 big truckloads of stuff that cost not that much, really. I mean, even though we lost a lot of money on the facility, we actually did it on a really good budget. It was a unique place. People loved being there. And to have had that experience of creating a homestead for people away from home, it was almost like the best hotel. That was really a fabulous, fabulous thing.
It really was. It really was.
Glenn, you know what you reminded me of? The archetype cards that we just introduced. I think that part of the experience of building the facility from scratch led into that, because they were also a vision, not knowing how to produce a product ever before, using something that had to do with skill sets that we had. We know what they were, and we transformed them into something that came out of a vision. But we had the experience of doing something from a vision.
Exactly.
This is a successful product.
Exactly, and we built the software to make that protocol run, and I guess the question for the audience is, what is it that you're envisioning for your dream and your goal? How is the fear of shame stopping you? I'm not encouraging anybody to be impulsive. I want everybody to do the planning and research and everything they need to do. But in the context of that, I think if we wait until it's perfectly safe and there's not going to be any risk whatsoever of feeling that shame, then it'll never happen. There's always going to be this gap between what you think you might be able to do and what you're 100% confident that you can do. Some of the best salespeople I've met, they stand up and they say, oh, I can definitely do that, and they've never done it before. And then they deal with the anxiety and they figure it out. It's not like they're lying, because they've got enough judgment to know what they might be capable of doing if they research and coordinate their resources and work it out. And I think that that's an integral part of achievement of any type, is dealing with that anxiety and the possibility of shame. And so for me, I think this is what we're all saying, is that, so what? We lost $2 million. So what? We went deep into debt. We failed. We failed. So what? So what? What didn't kill us made us stronger. And now we have more belief that the worst that can happen if we fail is, in a grand vision, is that we will live through it together. And I think if it were to happen again, I don't think it will, because I think that I put enough effort into developing the research systems and identifying risk management flags that I think that I wouldn't make as grand a mistake as we did last time. But if it did happen again, we would make it through it again.
And there's some things you can't control no matter what you do. Things will always happen. Things always happen. So having gotten through something difficult, what do they say? If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger?
If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, right.
I really feel stronger after that. I feel very much stronger.
So I got a few things that I want to ask you about. Now, the first thing I want to say here is some people are sitting here and you're probably thinking, okay, well, Glenn is like a rocket scientist. Maybe Glenn can get out of debt, but I don't know if I can. Now, I want to address something here. What I do, it's like half of my customers are like real brick and mortar businesses that are just, trying to advertise, and it's like, and the other half are people that are trying to figure out how to make businesses work. And so I sort of straddle the line between traditional businesses and also business opportunity people. Now, in the whole business opportunity world, if you're in the business of selling that, a lot of that is the art of making smart people look dumb so they could convince you that you could do it too, okay? When I was in Amway years ago, I noticed that the Amway guys were really, really good at sort of picking their nose and looking like idiots when they needed to, so people, and kind of having this aw shucks thing. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But what I observed when I really paid attention to them was that whatever aspect, they would be good at various different things, but they had somehow honed a skill for doing something that was unusually good. Okay, so it was a game of trying to make it look like anybody can do this when, in fact, anybody cannot do this. And I am very emphatic in saying that if anybody comes up to you and says, hey, I got a business for you and anybody can do it, run the other way, because it's either a bad business or they're lying. Okay?
Good point, yes.
Now, Glenn and Sharon Livingston are very smart people, and they are very resourceful people. But nonetheless, part of the reason that they got in over their head was they kind of got outside of their talent zones. Is that true?
That's 100% true.
Okay. And the way you end up digging your way out of this is you went back into your talent zones.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
And everybody has talent zones. Everybody has things where to you it seems very ordinary, but to almost everybody else it's like, how do you do that? You make that look so easy. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Glenn and Sharon just kind of stuck their finger in their nose and started working hard and got out of this. They had to use all their brain power. Their brain power got them in the mess, and the brain power is needed to get them out.
Perry, I should just clarify that I did occasionally stick my finger in my nose.
Yeah, me too. So, okay, having said that, I think because a lot of people on this call sort of know who you are, they're tempted to put you on a pedestal like you're superhuman or something like that, and that is not true.
Well, Perry, I mean, he is superhuman in some ways, but not with regard to this.
Yeah.
Bad joke. Didn't work. Sorry.
Well, you know.
It's not even a joke. If anybody knows, it's Sharon. And there is a part of me that I don't really let out publicly on seminars and everything because I generally want people to identify with my strongest elements and be able to walk away with that. But there's a part of me that I'm always fighting that's very negative. All of the voices you were describing before, it says, this can't be done, I'm really a failure, and my father was Dr. Livingston, I'm not really Dr. Livingston, so it's a big fight. The other thing, Perry, is that I'm smart, but I'm not rocket scientist smart. I mean, I actually had a lot of training in intelligence testing, so I know the difference, and I've had the tests, and I'm smart. I'm smarter than average. I'm not rocket scientist smart. I've got a lot of weaknesses. Like a lot of guys could work, 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, and I can't. I just can't. I work in spurts, and then I get really frustrated, and I have to have time off. I have to have time off, and no matter what's going on, I just got to get away. It's a liability. I would probably get more done if I could work more consistently and just deal with the frustration like a lot of people do, but I can't. I know that about myself. It's what it is, and I work around it.
And guess what? Everybody has work pattern idiosyncrasies. Brian, for the last year or two, he's figured out that there's certain times of the day when he's really productive, and there's certain times of the day he shouldn't be trying to get anything done at all. And he used to beat himself up for it. He used to literally believe he was a bad person because he always had this big productivity slump at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And he would just berate himself and get out the whip and whip himself back into shape. And he figured out, hey, there's certain patterns to how you should do things, for how he should do things because of the way he's built. And the other thing I want to say about, let's say Glenn was rocket scientist smart. There's an awful lot of rocket scientists who are totally broke, right?
I meet a lot of them. A lot of them buy my course, and they totally get all the left brain stuff. They totally understand how to do the surveys and the statistics and make the predictions, but they can't put together how to translate that into empathic sales copy and actually building the relationships with people to develop a customer service center and do the kind of things you need to do to have a business. Yeah, I mean, we definitely all have our weaknesses. I hear people say, well, Glenn's too smart for me to do what he does a lot. I get a little frustrated with that because I think that it's something easy to say. It's something easy to say, and it gives people an excuse for not doing stuff. And I wouldn't want to encourage people to do something that they're not going to be able to do. But I also think that most people can do a lot more than they think that they can do. Most people can do a lot more than they think that they can do, and if they don't succumb to panic and they're not terrified of failure and they're not terrified of the shame and they keep connected with the people that they love, I think that most people could accomplish a lot, regardless of even if we go into a depression. I think that there were people that got wealthy in the depression, there's people that held their own, people that started businesses, there's people that felt like the depression was some of the best times of their lives, and I just think that most people think less of themselves than they really should. So that's why I was willing to do the call.
There's something else I definitely want to have you guys talk about, which is, at the beginning of the call you said $700,000 is a lot of therapy sessions. It might have been mighty difficult with a certain set of skills to get out of this. You retooled a bunch of things and made yourself more productive.
We did.
So talk about that. And talk about some of your online businesses, and talk about what Sharon did. And
okay, Sharon, how do you want to talk about what you did first?
Let's see, a little background about that. I run focus groups. I'm a qualitative marketing researcher, and I do that for large corporations. And when we opened the facility, I had to go and tell everybody that I was no longer going to be doing that because I was inviting all my competitors to come to this conference center, and they wouldn't want to come if they thought I might try to steal their clients, and who would blame them? I told everybody in the world that I was no longer running groups. I was no longer being a moderator. That was my job title. I had to go back and call everyone that I knew to say, oops, only kidding, I'm moderating. That was a very, very big deal. I also took the opportunity to start training people to do what I do. So I opened up a school for moderator training, and that was a very big deal for a number of reasons. One, because it gave us another venue for earning money, and also people who do training are seen as experts. So it helped to rebuild, reestablish my expertise as someone, a go-to person for clients to come to me because I'm teaching others what to do. I tried to do all kinds of things to rebuild my situation, because when you tell people that you're leaving, they feel abandoned, and they're not so crazy about coming back so quickly. So that was a huge deal.
Yeah, I remember when I was in high school, this guy was moving to Iowa, and we were never going to see him again, and we had this tearful goodbye, and then the next fall he came back, and it's like, well, Bob, you were supposed to leave. And we cried over you and everything, and what are you doing here?
Exactly. Exactly. They're not crazy about having you back once you told them that you left. It's like you leave for another suitor, and I was only kidding, I love you, you're the one. Well, but wait a second, you just had this affair with another person, and what are you doing back? I'm not sure I want you back. So that was a huge deal to get over.
Well,
yeah. Perry, for me, I would describe the progression as once we get out of the facility, and I'd acquired some online skills, but was really exhausted from the corporate consulting again, and another time I can talk more specifically about that protocol. It's kind of interesting. But I really got the bug to make money selling electrons. I really wanted to hide behind my computer and sell e-books. That's why, besides the fact that I had no money anymore to experiment with, but that's why I started researching guinea pigs and rabbits and radon and all the things that I was working in back then and building all those e-books. For a couple of years, that's all I wanted to do. And then I guess it was around the time that you asked me if I would tell people what I was doing, and I got up and spoke at your seminar, that I realized that I actually didn't hate people as much as I thought, or hate is the wrong word. I didn't need to hide as much anymore. I needed to kind of go someplace and lick my wounds, and then I started to enjoy getting up and talking. And I also realized that it wasn't a good business model to have 17 different e-books, even if they were all profitable, because you can't really develop any back ends for that or do anything. You could do 6 figures with that. You can't really do 7 figures, and certainly not 8 figures. And so if I wanted to start adding zeros, I was asking myself, what do I need to do? And the first idea was that I was going to be teaching research, and I really enjoy that, and I still do that. But as I've healed, I've come to the conclusion that to really service people, you need to be willing to do some things for them. Not just to sell them information or a book or a course, but actually to do things for them. And the primary internet competency that I developed was the pay-per-click marketing. And I developed this pay-per-click proficiency and a lot of credibility in the industry because I was speaking at seminars and had a lot of relationships. And so then I started to have some of the people I was working with ask if I could show them what I was doing, and would they manage some pay-per-click clients. And I wrote a little sales letter, and before you knew it, I had a pay-per-click business. And then I started partnering with Jeff Hughes, who spends $1 million a year of his own money in pay-per-click, and had already had 55 employees and was good at developing systems. And long story short, I don't want to turn this into a sales pitch. I'm building an agency. I'm building an online agency, starting with pay-per-click services, and I'm finding that that's really my calling. I'm just loving the people that I'm working with, and I'm loving actually being able to take someone's business and help them get an immediate impact without having to wait for them to do it themselves, and all they have to do is trust us. And I really see that that's the direction that my business is going to grow, and that's what I'm doing. Probably always speak and do seminars, and I love teaching people about research, even though it's hard to get them to do it. I'm very fascinated by that, and I enjoy meeting with people at the seminars and everything, but I'm trying to build the world's most credible online agency. So that's what I'm doing.
You got the bug. You said, I want to sell electrons, which you did and still do. You've got these ebook businesses and these different niches. So how did you go about getting good at this? They didn't teach you that in grad school.
I hired you as a coach many years ago, and I still pay you to focus on my stuff. I hired Jonathan Mizell. I feel like many other people, I bought course after course after course and gradually narrowed it down to 2 or 3 people that I felt knew what they were doing, studied them intensively. Then I had to go through a period of teaching myself not to study so intensively and just to focus on really integrating the things that the 2 or 3 people that I really respected were doing. I joined your mastermind group for a while. I went to other mastermind groups. I networked with people. When I find someone that I think knows something that I don't in the field, and a lot of this has had to do with copywriting, I've had 3 or 4 different people that I talk to once a month, some of them once a week, just to review all of my stuff, just to literally rip me apart and tell me what I'm doing wrong and what I can learn. And one of the benefits of having been an academically raised person is that I know what the value of school is, and there really isn't any school that teaches direct response. There really isn't any place where you can get a 4-year degree in direct response and really know what works. There's too much politics and intertwining with advertising agencies' desire to not be accountable, and so you really don't get in the business schools what you need to get for becoming a direct response marketer. And so I say, well, how am I going to put together my own PhD? How am I going to put together my own PhD in internet marketing? And so I spent a fortune. Even when I didn't have money, that was one of my priorities. That's what I did. You know, when my parents asked me, well, how much did you spend on coaches this year? Or how much did you spend on, you spent $1,000 on a bunch of discs? I'm uncomfortable. It goes against the norm, but the truth is that's where I got the knowledge. I got the knowledge from all the information marketing products and seminars, and I got the focus from coaching, but also I have to say from pain. Somebody should have told me not to build 17 ebook businesses. I had the formula down by the 5th one. Someone should have said, pick your direction, build a company, don't build 17 little advertising machines. Part of it is pain. Part of it is making mistakes. I mean, I've made mistakes along the way. I'm billed as this guy who did everything perfect, and I've got that straight-up graph and everything like that. I made a lot of mistakes. I didn't really understand how to work with partners. I've come to the conclusion that you need to either partner up a level. Like, for example, one of the more successful things I did was convince you to do joint venture partnering because you were a level higher than me, and you brought me up. But when people approached me to partner with me, I didn't hold them to the same standards as I was offering you. And I was just kind of honored, and I was a little bit enthralled with being famous. And so I wound up with a lot of partners that were not really capable of going up a level. Because I feel horrible about disappointing people, I let those go on way too long, and 1 or 2 of them have worked out, but I lost a year and a half doing that without making a lot of progress. And so now, I mean, look what's happening as soon as I partnered with Jeff, who had an almost $10 million company and really knew how to scale things and make sure that the systems were in place and how quickly this agency is growing. That was a really key learning. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I don't struggle with this so much anymore, but it used to feel very strange to me. Well, first of all, when I was in debt and struggling and all this kind of stuff, and then, okay, so I'm going to spend all this money buying all these CDs or going to these seminars or whatever. That's a little strange, and sometimes I felt like, man, I'm giving all my extra money to some guru or something. And of course, you could also look at it like, well, you're giving all your extra money to unnecessary birthday parties where all the kids are supposed to buy presents for the other kids, and they already got more toys than they could play with. So, like, what aspect of out of control spending are you going to criticize? Hopefully not the one that is actually going to get you out. Education of what we do, it costs a lot of money, but you know what? So does Harvard, and so does Stanford, and so does your local community college. And, I think, when I do coaching programs and stuff, I have guarantees, and when I sell products, people can return them. You can't do that with a Stanford education. They don't guarantee anything. It might be respectable and your relatives might be proud of you, but there's a lot of educated derelicts out there.
I guess what I wanted to underscore, which was particularly hard for me, was when we were so close to bankruptcy. Truthfully, Sharon pushed me to do this more than me being willing to do it myself. I mean, Sharon was saying, how are you going to get out of this without talking to people who are already making money online? If that's what you want to do, how are you going to do that without talking to them? And for us to find the money to do that back then was, I'm just hesitating because I don't want it to sound like a pitch, but it's the truth. I had to bite the bullet and say, this is where the knowledge is going to come from. This is where it is. And if I can't pay this vendor this month, but I really need to hire a coach, then that's what I got to do.
Let's talk about the celebration part. You guys are out of debt, and things are different now. Like, what did you do? After you, sent off the last check or whatever, what happens after that?
We went for a hike. It was really good, except that my socks were too scratchy. We went for a 10-mile hike, and I came home with scratched up ankles, but it was worth it.
It's the simple things, isn't it?
It really is. It really, really is. And, that being able to cuddle up and, watch TV and, do simple things like that, have dinner with friends.
That's beautiful. I remember the day that I got all paid off. And it was I don't recall that we did anything really super fancy or anything. I do remember we bought what we wanted to buy each other for Christmas for the first time. That was pretty cool. But, mostly it was just I think I'm just going to enjoy this feeling for a really long time.
Yeah. You know what, Perry? I think that we're both so busy. I've got so many things doing. I'm building a product this weekend and running the agency, and Sharon is busy building account cards and taking care of her clients, and we're just so happy to have the time together that it's kind of not like, I remember when I defended my dissertation, that was a day when I felt like I was free. I don't think the freedom has really hit me yet. I think that maybe on December 1st, when we don't have to write that $7,000 check to the bank, maybe that's when it's going to hit me. Mostly this is the day we're focusing on it the most because we're talking about it with you, and we're just enjoying each other. And
enjoying our work. The biggest deal was that we had moved away from our core competencies. Someone had actually said that to me. A friend of mine said, well, are you surprised, you moved away from what you do? And it was like, whoa. I mean, it was fun to do, but it was really different. So now whatever we do with that in mind, and that, Glenn, when you wrote the cheese factory story.
I don't think we have time for that now. I don't really remember what it was.
About everybody has to do their job and do what they're best at. And it was a huge aha to me that, oh my God, I can't be everything to everyone, but I can be this. I really can be this.
Absolutely.
Satisfying.
Congratulations to both of you guys for doing this and sticking it out. Congratulations to Sharon for sticking to your guns and not throwing in the towel, and wish you the best next chapter of your life doing what you'd like to do.
Thanks
so much.
So thank you for being with me. Thanks, everybody, for being on the call. You guys all have a great weekend, okay?
Okay. Thanks, Barry.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.